Patrick Donadio is a communication strategist and a communication coach who has trained thousands of leaders in Fortune 100 companies. Patrick authored The Impact Process, a communications system to help you communicate with impact, with clarity, and to create deep relationships. When people tell us that we need to think before you speak, that we have two ears instead of one mouth because we're supposed to listen twice as much as we speak, that's easy to say, but Patrick really offers us a system that really details what needs to happen under that think part of the process. So join me for this conversation. Not only we will go into this communication impact, Patrick also tells us his story on how he entered this line of business, how he got his firm to be so successful, how he started working with some of these massive corporations in Fortune 100. And he also shared his best advice for business development. And is one of my favorite conversations out there at the Business of Trust. So you are in for a treat. This is such an energetic conversation and you will really enjoy it. Please make sure to rate us and subscribe in whatever platform you're listening from, and let's tune in. Here we go. Hey, Patrick, welcome to the Business of Trust podcast.
Hey, Hugo, good to see you, my friend.
I heard you for the first time through our mutual friend, Damian Goldberg, who has a podcast, Lead with a Coaching Mindset. And as soon as I heard this conversation, I became a big fan and I knew I had to have you in the podcast. So I'm so honored that you said yes. So I want to start since the beginning. Like, how did you get into this line of business?
Well, how much time do you have? I think at a very early age, I always enjoyed interacting and communicating. I was always hanging around my aunts and uncles and older adults. And at some point, kind of realized, actually, I'm kind of funny and entertaining. So I tend to find myself in the center of attention. I got a job where I was in charge of creating seminars for police officers. But that job as the association program director really taught me about speaking and training. And literally in about a year and a half, my boss left. I got promoted to executive director. And that's when I realized I really like speaking and training. That was the turning point because I was hiring speakers and I was saying to myself, these speakers are pretty good, but I think I'm pretty good. So literally at the age of 28, Hugo, I just quit my job and jumped out to be a speaker and a trainer. And that's how I got started in this line of business. Obviously, I didn't realize that if you want to be an entrepreneur, like a lot of our listeners are, it takes more than really being good at what you do. It also means you have to be a good marketer and a salesperson. But that's how I got into the business. I had a passion for what I loved to do. I was good at it, I thought. And at some point, I just made a commitment to take the risk. And then I like to use the word actually make a risk and not take a risk because I really didn't just jump out. I had calculated that I had enough money to live on for a couple of years. I knew enough about what it takes to be a business leader because I was running an association. So, but I think the story that we all share is very interesting for people to know where you come from because that determines a lot about who you are and also about how you're going to add value to other people's lives.
It sounds like you jumped into this with a lot of clarity and conviction. And what strikes me is like you were 28. So I want to zoom in into that moment. You're 28. You're like, okay, let's go. I have enough money saved for 2 years. Like, how did you go from that moment to landing your first account?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did was I went back and tapped all of my network. So my first account was actually, I had spoken when I was the director for the association at a couple different national conferences, but I wasn't getting paid. I was just, doing it as a part of my job. So the first thing I did, which I think a lot of people who are listening today, if you're just starting your business, is go to where your network lives or where I call the low-hanging fruit. So I went back to an association conference that I had spoken to for free and said, listen, I'm back on my own now. I'd love to come back and do that again. So they were gracious enough to bring me in. And I came back this time and got a paycheck. Not the kind of paycheck I think I deserve, but it was a paid engagement. So that first account for me was just going back into my network. And pretty much for that first year, I tapped into a lot of my contacts at different associations that I had connected with as an association director, and also at different law enforcement agencies that I connected with. Then, of course, once my network ran out, then I realized, I really don't know what I'm going to do next because I didn't know how to sell and market, Hugo. So I had all this stuff and then it died up and then I'm like, oh boy. And that's when I learned about the National Speakers Association and eventually, of course, International Coaching Federation about 15 years later when I started coaching.
Tell us a little bit more about that. Just because you know them doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to hire you. There's got to
Right.
be, you got to do your part right, the
Yeah.
marketing part right, the business development right. When you're faced with this problem, the National Speaker Association and the International Coaching Federation supported you, but in what way?
Yeah.
How did you play that marketing game?
Yeah. Well, I think to me, both of those associations are what I call your tribe, right? People that do what you do. And so if you're listening right now, you don't have a tribe, find a place where people hang out to do what you do because you're going to learn from people who are 5, 6, 8 years ahead of you. So the National Speakers Association, we had a local chapter. I had seen a speaker locally who was a member of that chapter. He said, "Hey, take me to breakfast. I'll tell you how you get into the business." And he recommended I go to this group. And at the time, Hugo, you have to remember I was single, so it was a bigger risk. But I like mac and cheese. I didn't have to worry about feeding a family. But I went to the meeting and I just felt like, wow, these are my people. I mean, people were very helpful, very nice. They were telling me about the kind of things that they did to get started, what mistakes they made. So I think early on, whether you have an association or not, you need to surround yourself with people to support you because it can be a lonely business. I'm over 2 decades more doing this, and I've always just been a solopreneur. But I've always had people that I could tap into to help me. So that's kind of how I jumped in. And then from there, I learned a lot about sales and marketing. If you want to be in business for the long haul, you got to be good at what you do, but you also have to be good at driving in the business and building those relationships. So that kind of is a little bit about how that association helped me. And just one last thing for both of those organizations, I've got involved and paid forward. So I've been on the board for the National Speakers Association. I've been the chapter president twice for NSA Ohio. I was a founder for our ICF chapter in Columbus, Ohio, because I'm a big believer when you get something, you have a responsibility to pay it forward to help other people. So what goes around comes around.
Hey there, just a quick message before we continue. I'm your host, Hugo Sanchez, and I'm the founder of Mundus Media, the sponsor of this podcast. I created this show because I was tired of seeing coaches and consultants getting sold cheap marketing tactics that just don't work. I think that real growth doesn't come from these hacks. They come from solid relationships, referrals, and reputation. That's exactly how we operate at Mundus Media. We are a full-service digital marketing agency that helps B2B coaches and consultants grow through relationship-based marketing strategies, not by commoditizing your brand, but by amplifying what makes you unique. Think of us as your tech-savvy sidekick for product launches, web development, podcast production, email marketing, and ad campaigns. If you're curious about how we can help you, check out our work at mundusmedia.com. Okay, back to our conversation. I mean, I'm single too, so I can relate to what you're saying. Did you meet your wife at the NSA or the ICF by any chance?
No, I didn't. I didn't get married till I was 33, so I was a pretty old guy. But I met my wife. That's a whole other story on a blind date from two of my friends that I had known from college. So, anyways, but I did. Yeah. But it's all about relationships, right? It's just another example of referrals. You get referrals, and next thing you know, it could turn into something great.
Right, definitely. Patrick, something that I'm always interested in is I think that I've seen the power of that these relationships can have to bring our business to a whole other level. Like I'm an immigrant and I came here with no contacts, and through my work I've met people, but these people have referred me, and some of them have referred me a lot. I call them champions.
Yes.
People who just love and work to love what I do and refer me like crazy.
Right.
Have you had champions in your life that just like took your business to a whole other league? Can you tell us perhaps a story of one?
Yeah. I've been very blessed because nobody gets there on their own, right? Because to get where we are, we've got to really ask for help. And that was a big thing, I think, for me. I had a hard time asking for help. But as I got into these relationships, particularly again, NSA Ohio, I met some great people who, took me under their wings. And then real quickly, we started, and I don't know if you knew much, Hugo, about a mastermind group, but we started a mastermind group where about 5 or 6 of us speakers got together every month and we tried to help each other. So again, I had the support from my colleagues. And believe it or not, I got support from my clients. I'll give you a quick story. This is a little bit later on into my career, but we just moved to a new city. I'm in Ohio, and our kids are fairly young. And the local chamber asked me, would you be willing to come and do a little presentation for students? And I said, listen, I don't really talk to students. I said, but my kids are young and maybe someday they'll be on the program. So I did, and it was not a fee paid engagement. So I went and did my workshop on presentation skills, and I met the woman who was the organizer, and she brought her husband. And so at the end of the event, her husband comes up to me and says, "Oh my gosh, you are really good. Do you ever talk to adults?" And I said, "Oh my," I said, "I always talk to adults. I never talk to kids." He goes, "Well, here's my card. I want you to reach out to me." Well, this guy was a vice president for a Fortune 500 company. And we got together. He brought me in to do a little bit of a workshop. Now, at this point, Hugo, I'm also doing coaching. And I said, "Well, listen, I'd be happy also to do some coaching." He goes, "Oh, funny, why don't you coach me?" So I did a workshop. I coached him. And then right after, he says, "Man, you're amazing, but I got to tell you something. Your fees are too low. If you want to work with my company, you have to raise your fees." I'm like, "Okay, I've never had anybody tell me I got to raise my fees." And literally, Hugo, for the next 10 years, this gentleman brought me into his company, and I pretty much coached, I don't know, over 20 people through this organization, both in the C-suite and at the VP level. So again, this is it's not going to happen all the time, but that's the power of relationships, both your peers who, can help you, but also your clients. Relationships are such an important component, and believe it or not, great communication skills are one of the key ways to build deeper relationships.
And that's a perfect segue into the next question that I have for you, because you have authored a wonderful framework called the Impact Framework. I'll let you explain it to us, but in a nutshell, how can this communication framework help us establish key relationships with people?
Yeah. Well, I think for all of us who are business owners or entrepreneurs, most of us are selling a service, right? An intangible. So we have to work really hard at making something intangible tangible. And for me, I was doing communication skills training for a long time, but I happened to be lucky enough to be a Goodwill ambassador to Japan, Hugo. And I was over there with Rotary, and I stayed for 4 weeks living with Japanese families. And I learned so much about the culture, but I also learned something that really changed the way I look at my business. And that is, one day on my third host family, I was really, really tired of eating, sushi, which people love, but I just wanted the hamburgers. So I said to my host family, "Hey, they had 2 little kids." I said, could we go to McDonald's? Because I'm kind of homesick. And so they were like, "Oh, McDonald's." So their parents and the kids, we went to McDonald's, and it could be any fast food restaurant, right? But I got the hamburger and the fries. And when I was eating that, first of all, I felt good because it was comfort food. But second thing I noticed was this food tastes exactly the same as it did back here in the States. And that's when it dawned on me, you know what? When you have a process or a system, you get a much greater result. So when I got back to the States, ironically, I found a book by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth, which talks about processes and systems. And so I took my communications workshop, and I decided, and again, this is a long time ago, to create a process. And so that's how I came up with the impact process. And so if you don't mind, I'll take like 60, 70 seconds. I'll walk you through the 6 steps, and then we can go deep on any one of these. But these are the 6 keys that I've learned over my years as a speaker, a trainer, and as an educator, and as a student. And I'm still a student. I'm a lifelong learner. That to be a great communicator, there are really 6 key elements. So it's the word impact. And if you like, Hugo, I could even give you a link and we could put in the show notes if people want to get a look at the process. But let me share it for you quickly. The I is the intention. Every great communication starts with the thought. Think before you speak. We're all impatient today. We all tend to want to hurry up, just start typing, just start picking up the phone, just start talking. But what I tell people is, look, take 30 seconds, take a step back and ask yourself, why am I having this communication? Don't start with the what, start with the why. And then, of course, I have a laser-focused intention template that I like to teach people in that. The M is the message and the method. So once you know the intention, what's the best method and what's the best message, right? And we want to go to our go-to method. Oh, I love email. I love a text. I like to pick up the phone. But I tell people, think about the receiver's favorite method and start there. Because if you start there, they're going to be more likely to respond. So pick the right method, then you want to frame the message, right? A good opening, you have your body, a closing, whether it's a speech, an email, a conversation like we're having today, you have an opening, a body, and a closing. And we talk a lot about creating content. So then I like to say, intent before content, then intent drives content, right? The P is the person, and we're all different, and I know a lot of coaches who are out there who are using personality profiles. But I think to me, just be aware that, again, when you're communicating, don't assume we're all the same. So take your message that you've created to achieve your intention and adjust it to the person, right? Introverts, extroverts, analyticals, relationals. You want to think about the receiver and make that connection. That's the IMP, the I am planning. The A is activate. There are 2 things we talk about in the activation step: active listening and active engagement. And those are really important components. And just going back to sales, right? Good salespeople are great listeners. They're not out there selling and promoting. They're asking, they're diagnosing, they're coming up with, what I call the problem solving mindset. So being a good listener, and then of course active engagement, right? In today's world, everybody wants to be engaged. I don't know, Hugo, if you've heard of the Gallup studies, but they've been tracking engagement for the last 15 years, and literally, it's about a third of the people are engaged. So being able to engage people is very important. That's the A. The C is clarify, right? How do you make sure the message you sent is the same message? Checking for understanding, and then of course the T, which is my favorite step, and it's really my coaching step, is transform. And that is, how do you transform this interaction into the intention you set? And we talk about two types of transformations. External, which we all know about, deadlines and follow-ups. But then the other one that comes from my coach's training is the internal transformation, right? What's going to get in the way in terms of the mindset or the belief of this person helping you get to the intention you want to achieve? So there you go. You got the 8-hour workshop in about 90 seconds. But I think it's important for people to be aware that to be a great communicator, it's not a soft skill. There's a little bit of a science to it. And whether you use my system or not, at least I want to encourage people who are listening, take some time to think before you start communicating about what it is that's going to make this a very valuable and impactful interaction.
When I first heard about this framework, I just absolutely loved it because a lot of times I just find myself like speaking and then like I just miss the point. Like I didn't take the time. They say think before you speak, and but that's easy to say, but a framework actually offers you the what to think of. Like what do you want to think of before you speak is the impact process. So it just like brings a lot of like a system, like it brings a lot of clarity into the step by step of what to do before I actually open my mouth. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I can tell that you actually are really good at this because I got a very thorough response from you talking about how to get us really clear about what our goal is today. So you were good about the intention and crafting some important things for me to be more valuable to your listeners. So thank you, Hugo.
Well, thank you, thank you. Coming from you, that's a huge compliment. I know that, like, when I was exploring your website, I know that you also do business development coaching. And what I
Yes.
love about you doing this is that, I mean, you're very well established in the industry, and you're talking from experience. So that's really powerful. And when I started this podcast, it was because, as I was telling you earlier, that I've seen so much noise out there when it comes to marketing, so much noise around like what I call the marketing bro
Yeah.
of like this webinar, this funnel got me 30,000, like it's so I don't believe that works. I haven't seen it work. And
Right.
I wanted to offer anecdotal evidence of what works. And so I think we're in the same note here. People who are listening and they are trying to grow their firm, what would be the best line of advice that you would give to them? And you
Yeah.
share a lot already, but
Yeah. Well,
I'm sure
thank you.
there's more.
And, that was the other group that I mentioned. You talked about long-term clients. Another organization that I ended up working with was actually my first coaching client was a law firm. So I had been doing business development training, and they asked me to come in and help their lawyers build their practice, which I think anybody who has a service is building a practice, whether you happen to be a consultant or a speaker or a trainer. But I came in and did that, and that's another example where they had me for like 6 years coaching all their people. But what I think is critical about business development is number one is to have clarity around your value and what you offer. So when you go to your website, I want you to, like, if you haven't been to your website recently, go to your website and take a look on your homepage. Is it about you or is it about your value that you offer your receiver? So number one is people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And people buy from people they know can give them value and offer a solution to their problem. So you want to make sure, A, you're a problem solver. B, you talk about the problem you can solve. And C, you share at least some value about what you can do. So don't be afraid to give away some tips, right? Don't always say, well, that's in my book. I can, buy my book. That's not what it's all about, right? It's about building deep relationships. So number one, lead with intention, right? Number two, be a great problem solver, right? And be clear about that. And I think a lot of folks, and I know myself, Hugo, or my first 10 years, I was all about me. Me. Look at my website, a picture of me, and then here I got this degree. And then I realized that really it's about the buyer. And another phrase that I heard from a speaker, Jeffrey Gitomer, is a sales speaker, he said, you're not selling, you're just helping people buy. And that really shifted for me the mindset, right? that, yeah, I'm not really helping. I'm not selling. I'm just helping people buy. I know I have a good service to offer. And if they don't hire me, they're going to get somebody else who may be, one of those folks you talked about, buy my $30,000, right? So thinking about the value you can offer others and building those relationships. And then the last thing, which what we're doing today in a way, is really being visible, right? You got to be out there. You got to have a brand. You got to build your brand, right? My brand is impact. Everything I do now is around my impact process, communicating with impact, presenting with impact, branding with impact, right? And so I've learned over years, and it takes time. It takes time to get that clarity. But once you get that clarity and people start to know who you are, then you got to continually to get your message out there. So again, I could probably do a whole nother podcast, about, but I want to at least give some folks some ideas of the things that I've learned over the last, 2 decades of being in business. And it's something I love. I would never go back to a real job. I don't mean that in a negative way. But I will say it's a lot of work. So if you don't love what you're doing and you're not doing it really well, there's a good chance you're not going to be around.
I just want to say, I love how your mind works, because, you have such a capacity, I can see, of bringing process, clarity, and pinpoint the essentials in things that can be very complex, emotionally complex, or complex because of how overwhelming it can be, to grow your business. And I've been doing marketing for a while, and I completely agree with everything you're saying. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I know we're almost out of time, but there's one last thing I wanted to share. You mentioned the process, and I have my impact process, but I also want to give folks who are listening today, we talk about business development, I have a little business development process, and I call it the BDA. What do you do before you get the client? What do you do during your work with the client? And what do you do after the client? And if you can create a system that's repeatable around those 3 elements and start to really get in this process of every time I get a new prospect, I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when I'm working with them, I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And once they are done working with me, I do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This system of processes can really, really grow your business. And that's kind of what I've done in my business development coaching, is I've really helped people take what they think is, I just do these things, to say, no, you got to do them in some kind of a formal, structured way that's going to really be repeatable. And when you're repeatable, you're referable. And when you're referable, you can hang around for a couple decades.
Patrick, thank you so much for all the amazing advice that you have shared with our audience today. This has been one of my favorite episodes so far. And for people who are listening and they want to connect with you, where would you like to send them? What would be the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, I think for me, again, LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, that's a great place to go. So go to my LinkedIn website. It's simply Patrick Donadio at LinkedIn, And I'm started to post, and Damien and I are working together. We're posting every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I'm putting up a lot of value there. I'm not putting up, hire me. It's all about things you can learn. Today, actually, I just put up my post, and it was about how to get more paid engagements. So ironically, it's a good timing. So LinkedIn's a great place to go. You can always go to my website, patrickdonadio.com, or email me, Patrick at Patrick Donadio. So it's pretty easy. It's all about Patrick Donadio. So I made it up. Try to make it simple, right? Here you go. So people
Simple
can find
branding.
It. Yeah.
Simple branding. I always say people go with your name as the brand, because people know you and meet and they want to work with you. So make that the brand.
Yeah.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for the generosity of advice you've shared with us today. I'm so honored that you spent this time with us. Thank you.
Yeah. Great to be here.
Hey, that's all for today. I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Patrick. Make sure to check out the show notes, because there's a few links out there with some information about the impact process, also more information about Patrick. If you really like this conversation, make sure to subscribe and rate us in whatever platform you're listening from. Every Friday, there's a new episode with a new guest, and we always talk about business development, developing trust, and solid relationships to propel your business forward. So if you want to stay in the loop, just make sure to go to thebusinesstrust.com and subscribe. Bye for now.